Gather the tools. Invest in the new. Read the directions, then follow them. Ask for help. Raise your hand and just ask. Ask and watch and learn. Plant mustard seeds. Plow it over. Do it again and again and again. Amend. Anywhere weeds grow, good growth can happen. Taken together, these are the lessons embedded in this installment of the 6 tenets. As I rewrite them, I am aware of how simple they sound. Particularly this tenet 3, plant roots. They sound simple, even to the point of simplistic. But they aren't, not at all. Revisiting this tenet with all that has happened to me and about me and to and about the Lace on Race community brings everything into sharp relief. 2 years ago, when I first wrote this, I had no inkling of what would turn out to be rather explosive growth. 6 months ago, I had no idea that toxic weeds would do their damnedest to choke out our entire orchard, and that I and my leadership team, and you, that we would have to rebuild almost from scratch. But we did. As I look back at the last 6 months, I can see where we have followed teachers' directives. I can feel Senor B's hands on my face, assuring me that the field would be beautiful again. I can hear R's ebullience and enthusiasm as she spoke of change and making way for new growth. I can also see where I, didn't always heed. Teacher never scowled, but always crisply pointed me back and points us back to the basics. Plowing and planting season is here. Let's dig deep. This is a story about sticking around. This is a story about Hesed. This is a story about muddy knees and chipped fingernails, a story of relentlessness and reliability and resilience. This is a story of soil. Terrible soil. Not fertile and loamy, but sandy and poor. Soil not worthy of the name. Soil that was more accurately called dirt. Soil that blew off and made my porch dusty. Soil with gopher holes and weeds and trash that came in after garbage day. Soil that was not at all amenable to orange trees, or anything else for that matter, or so I first thought. I'm talking about my own property. I have a front field, 1/2 acre of dirt that has lain fallow since I bought the property over 20 years ago. It is often brown and barren, except when it rained and the grass mixed with mostly weeds. Then they grow and grow and grow. 1/2 acre of dirt that has lain fallow. These years that I have been alone by myself, sometimes they even grew above my head. Good for nothing, or so I thought. So dense and uninviting that even my beloved Tika Rose rejected it. I would try to take care of it myself in fits and starts, but the job was just too damn much for one woman with two full-time jobs. One morning, I was at the wooden fence line, staring down at what felt like my failure. The worst property on the block. Every time I came up the driveway, I studiously avoided the tangle. Sometimes I would go out to at least pick up trash from the field, always in shadow, at night, so the neighbors wouldn't see. That front field was my shame. A metaphor that nothing good would ever grow, that what did spring up would have absolutely no value. No value. Like me. As I sank deeper, I heard a voice. We will call her Teacher. Gather the tools, Teacher said. Teacher who spent years, decades actually, making sure her charges had all the things they needed in their desks. Scissors, glue, sharp pencils, lined notebooks, flashcards. And when they forgot them, they received a crisp but kind reminder to check their backpacks. Gather the tools, she told me. Teacher had no idea what she was asking me to do. The tools were in the workshop, a place I had barely entered since my husband left. To go to the tools, to dust off, to sharpen and oil and use meant going into recesses and dark places in that workshop. It meant that I would have to remember. And it meant that I would prepare myself for pain. The pain of that remembering, of trauma, of loss, of despair. To use the tools meant finally acknowledging that it really was, indeed, just me. That no one was going to come and save me. That no one was going to come and use them to break soil but me. That I had to not just gaze out at the field in a sense of helpless impotence, but that I had to take responsibility for the health of that field. And in order to do that, I had to take responsibility for my own health. So into the workshop I went. Getting past the cobwebs and trying to figure out how to use the unfamiliar, because Robert had handled all of that stuff before. That was a challenge indeed. I used the wrong tools the wrong way. I got blistered and chapped. Some were dry and cracked and broke off. I barely touched them. It had been so long. I was so discouraged. I heard another voice. Invest in new, Teacher advised. New? Was Teacher kidding? I had been living in clinch mode ever since Robert left, and Teacher was telling me to invest in things I didn't even know how to ask for at the garden center. I stumbled and I fumbled my way through what I needed, my cart filling up and a shaking hand as I handed over hard-earned money that I wasn't at all was sure would ever be replaced. Well, I got 'em. Now what? What am I supposed to do with this, all this, all this stuff? Read the directions, then follow them. Such easy advice. But how often do I actually read directions before we make our attempts? For me, not often. Of course I know how to use a cutter and a blower and that thing that digs up tumbleweeds. Well, except that I didn't. And stopping and reading and checking and heeding made all the difference. I remember at church, we have this big coffee urn, and there's this big sign, probably put there by teacher, that says, read the directions first. Please, come on. I've made coffee before. I didn't need a tutorial on how to use a coffee urn. And that is exactly how I wound up cleaning up brown water and coffee grounds. And then I went into the drawer and I read the directions. Now with the knowledge, I felt more secure. But, going at half an acre alone for the few minutes or hours I could spare was not nearly enough. It rained a lot this year and last year, more than usual in San Diego. So I would make a small dent, and then the weeds would spring right back up. It was Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill again and again and again. I was bruised and sore and so tired. Ask for help, teacher said. Raise your hand. Just ask. Ask. That is something that is sometimes very hard for me to do. Impossible, really. Because if I asked, it meant letting someone know. It meant letting someone come up the driveway so they could see the depth of my shame, my not knowing, my failed efforts. If I asked, someone would ridicule me. Someone could say the job of fixing the tangled failure was just altogether too big. There was nothing to save. That was a risk I was almost sure I couldn't do. But the field was just that bad. So I had to get over my fear. And with wobbly knees and the sorest of backs, I did the seemingly impossible. Ask and watch and learn, teacher said. Ask and watch and learn. And so I did. And Mr. B came with his son and this truck and made short work of the front field. He held my face in his calloused hands and he looked at me with nothing but love and empathy, no contempt, no derision, just love. And he knew without my telling him each and every one of my struggles. And he looked at me and he said, we will make it beautiful. Together. Teacher, sitting over there by the only seemingly barren orange tree, sipped her orange spice and smiled. And so it was. Beautiful. At least it wasn't an eyesore. And the orange tree bloomed and bore the first fruits it had in years. Later, I told a version of the story to a new friend of mine, a friend who knows about fields. She runs an organic farm. That was new to me. And she had the instructions in her head on how to make a field fertile again, to make it not only presentable, but producing, not only surviving, but she knew how to make it thrive. Another teacher, mustard greens, she said. We will plant mustard greens. As it happens, Mustard greens have many uses for fallow fields. They hold the topsoil in. They are edible. Luckily for me, I like greens. And they make beautiful yellow flowers, which please the eye. More importantly, though, they nourish the soil. R told me to plant and grow and plow under. Plant, grow, plow under for at least 2-year cycles. The soil will then be ready to nurture new growth. It wouldn't take 2 weeks or 2 months. I had to be in the game and rotate my crop. Stay in the field, rotate my crop for 2 full years. There's no quick fixes when it comes to growth. There's no quick and dirty way to become the person that you say you want to be. In this case, it took 10 years, and sometimes it's going to take even longer. And you gotta be there in the field, trusting in the process, which is hard to do. 2 years is a long time to see good results. And so I asked her, I said, but would anything grow? I asked, would the mustard greens grow? And then she looked at me again with amazingly kind eyes, and she said this: anywhere weeds grow, good growth can happen. That sank deeply into my soul, like so many orange seeds. I won't lie to you. No quick fixes, beloveds. It will take a while, but our newly enriched soil will be able to nurture so many more trees and other lives. It's not a one and done, y'all, but the harvest is coming. Dig.